Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about some of my thoughts on the meta and current state of Dota Underlords. I won't really go into certain builds or strategies, but sort of a bigger picture look at the design of the game. So first I want to start with the positives, because the game really is in a great state right now. I think the game is the most fun to play that it has ever been, and I think that's due to three main factors. I do want to highlight these factors because they represent a great direction for the game, and I hope that the developers can learn from them and continue to implement similar changes. The first is the head-to-head update, making it so that you are actually playing against an opponent every round, and that winning or losing really does matter because it means that you're actually going to damage an opponent when you win, or you're going to take damage when you lose. It was definitely like a feels bad moment whenever you'd be 1v1 against an opponent and then you would win, but then on their board they also win and then nothing happens. And you'd be like, well, we just wasted our time, and like I don't really know if I'm actually stronger or weaker or like what the RNG was. And that just like it was a really weird aspect of the game that was originally made as a workaround, and I'm really glad that they have fixed that. It definitely feels more impactful, and the combat that you actually watch, you're mainly watching your own board, it actually matters every round. So that's great. The second is the removal of alliance items. Previously, you would get alliance items in loot rounds all the time, generally in the first, up to round 20 or 25, and it would always feel really bad whenever you see alliance items for an alliance you're not in or not even close to in, because you just have less loot options. These loot rounds are supposed to be a big, like, impactful turn for you. You're supposed to get this shiny piece of loot that's going to improve your team, but then if you just get a bunch of alliance items that you don't want or can't use, it really does feel bad, and you just have no choices, and it turns like a high point of the game into a low point of the game, and that's not fun for anyone. So I'm glad they got rid of that and made it so that all items are now pretty much useful for everybody. And that also means that some items like Embarrassment of Riches, the global item that provides you an extra option every round, did get a little bit weaker, because before you basically mandatory had to take it anytime you saw it, because you want to avoid the situation of getting 3 useless alliance items in your pack, and with the fourth one you're obviously less likely to get that. It's definitely not as mandatory as before, but it's still good. It's still a good item, Embarrassment of Riches, to increase your options. But when everything is pretty good and every option is reasonable, getting that extra choice, it doesn't add as much marginal value. The final and arguably most important change was the free reroll when you lose a PvP round. And this is really amazing for the fun aspect of the game. Previously, it was like soul crushing to go on an early losing streak. You just felt terrible the whole time. If you're losing, you get less gold, you lose some life, and you're actually trying to keep a losing streak, which is not good because winning would actually net you less gold because it breaks the losing streak, and no one should like want to be on a losing streak, right? Like that kind of goes against the idea of the game. So with the extra reroll, it certainly means that you're going to have more fun while losing. I mean, losing shouldn't be fun in general compared to winning, but it's not as bad as before. So like I'm having fun in the early game no matter whether I'm winning or losing now. If I'm winning, obviously great. I'm on a win streak. I'm getting extra gold. I'm like keeping my life total high. But if I'm losing, I get to like have this cool little puzzle. Like, how do I maximize my rerolls? Do I want to level up first? Do I want to buy certain units to increase the chances of other things showing up? And you have more options if you're losing, if you're behind, because you have that free reroll. It's not as good as winning, obviously, but in some cases you feel more engaged with the game. And I feel like I have more control over whether I do well or if I do terrible, whereas before it's like, oh, I got a bad couple rounds, I'm just going to have to accept a losing streak. It also makes games a whole lot closer. Very rarely are we going to have people who are on super high life totals, who are on like 15 round win streaks while everyone else is sub 50 life. A bad early game means that you no longer are resigned to a losing streak until round like 17 or so, and until you would generally like spend all of your gold and try to claw back in. There's a much better balance between all players here, and since winning and losing, I mean, winning gives more gold, but losing gives you the free reroll, which is more effective gold, but of course you do take damage. So later in the game, it also means that things are a lot closer. It's not uncommon to see like 6 people all within 10 life points of each other by the late stages of the game. That makes for every round much more interesting, much more tense, because you're like, oh, any number of people could get eliminated this round. We're all so close. It also means that the head-to-head combat's more engaging. You're watching a very impactful battle. It's not like you're at 20 life and they're at 80, and if you hit them, it doesn't really matter. Generally, people are going to be a lot closer in life total. But it also brings an item like Aegis of the Immortal to be a lot better, since previously being eliminated in the same round as someone else was kind of rare. You had a bit more spread, like people would be kind of evenly eliminated between rounds like 25 and 35. Like you'd probably get one per round within that range, roughly. Now it's like a big cluster of people are going to be eliminated every round. And so one extra turn of life of living with the Aegis can really move you up several placements easily. But that does lead me to a couple of the negative aspects of the game. So I don't want to seem like a downer, because in reality, the good parts of the game far outweigh the bad right now. The game's in a great spot, but there are always room for improvement, so I want to highlight some of the things that I think could be improved. As I just mentioned, it's not uncommon to see multiple people eliminated on the same round. The balancing of the free rerolls makes the weakest player not so weak, and the strongest player in comparison is not that strong. And if multiple people are eliminated on the same round, then placement is determined by who lost their round first. And that kind of stinks. The tiebreaker system is really terrible, and I know that they can do better. It was a remnant of the Dota auto chess days, where the damage you've taken was literally coded as a projectile that would take travel time to come and hit your courier, which meant that if you moved your courier further away, you would survive a half second longer and possibly get a better placement, which was just an absolutely silly mechanic. But they had to do that because it was the workaround in the engine they were running on. And Dota Underlords is very much a copy of the original auto chess, and they've since diverged from it, but the original ideas and systems like that were taken directly from Dota Auto Chess. With a fully standalone version of Dota Underlords with their own code system, I know that they can do better. So for one example of how silly how long you survive in the round is, take for example a unit like Doom, who has his Doom ability, which has a long duration. I think it's 20 seconds long, and it applies to a unit. If you have Doom on your team and he casts that on an opposing unit, but you lose, because the combat will continue for up to 5 seconds, kind of waiting for abilities to resolve, see if you maybe kill off an extra unit, let Witch Doctor's cask bounce. It'll let Doom's ability tick for an extra 5 seconds, which means you have 5 extra seconds of tiebreaker. You survive for 5 more seconds than somebody else who doesn't have Doom on their team, and that potentially gets you better placement, which is weird, to say the least. Same thing with Helm of the Undying, a very popular item that lets your unit live for 4 extra seconds. If you think you're about to get eliminated, it often makes sense to put Helm of the Undying on the unit that you think is going to die last, just because you get to buy yourself 4 extra seconds while they're in their undying state before you take damage, which could easily make the difference between a first and second, or not first and second place, but between 2 placements if somebody else is going to be eliminated on the same round as you. But I really wish they would move to some other kind of in-game metric, maybe net worth or something else like total experience. That one would be a little bit weird because you just level up experience right as you're about to lose. But some other metric of the game, I think, should be the tiebreaker if both people are eliminated on the same round, rather than just who died quicker. Nothing else in the game cares about how fast you win or lose a round. It only cares that you do win or lose a round. So why should the tiebreaker care about how quick the fight was? I don't really think that's great. The next aspect I want to discuss is the Brawny Alliance passive. This was obviously a port from the old Brawny Alliance item, as they removed a lot of Alliance items, which I agree with, and they moved some of the traits and abilities from it into the alliances themselves, which I also agree with. I think that's a great idea to keep the kind of flavor and style, play style of those alliances alive and well, and also give you more access to them consistently. The Brawny one has some problems, though. I think it's far too easy to commit to Brawny on turn 1. If you pick up Axe, you play Axe, he gets kills against the creeps, he gets bigger, he snowballs, and it's just I think he's probably the most popular turn 1 unit to pick right now. And which is kind of weird because he's not a great unit. His stats aren't great, his ability is okay. But you need to pick him on round 1 because you get to get 2 free kills. He literally says, if you pick him on round 1, gain plus 60 health. He has 60 more health, or 120 by the time you get 4 Brawny, by just picking him on turn 1 as opposed to picking him on turn 2. That's a little silly. These auto chess style games, including like Dota Underlords, traditional auto chess, or like Teamfight Tactics, or other games in this genre, in my opinion, should really be about adaptation and composition building, adjusting your team based on what you get, what you see, what combines well with each other, and evolving it and going every game trying something a little bit different, because obviously the units you get every game are going to be a little bit different. But a turn 1 axe really means you can just force him right from the start. And to my knowledge, none of the other games in this genre have a strategy like that, where it's like, oh, here's a 1-cost unit on turn 1, I'm going to buy it, and it's so much better now than it will ever be. I think it's also just far too snowbally in general, and snowbally, for those of you not familiar with the term, is like, if you get it started early, you're going to get stronger and stronger, and it's going to build on itself, and it's going to exponentially grow, whereas if you try to start it later, you're just going to be too small, and it won't get, you won't get off the ground. And that happens with Brawny, because the more early kills you get, the more health total you get, which means you survive longer, which means you deal more damage because you're surviving longer, and you can get more kills, which adds more health. And it's a feedback cycle that just makes itself stronger and stronger. Whereas if you start it later, and I mean later as in like round 2 or round 3, or like heaven forbid round 4, after all the creeps are gone, the initial creeps, then you just have less life total, meaning you're going to get less kills, meaning you're going to gain less life total and never get any kills, and it's going to be a disaster. And I would really prefer if they would say buff the numbers, give more health per kill that they get, but then not count the creep kills, specifically the ones in the opening rounds, because those were never really designed to like feed your units. Like the creep rounds are designed to get items. They're not designed to like stack up kills, which then gives you more health because of the Brawny passive. That just, I don't like that mechanic. And also because nothing else in the game right now cares about killing creeps. There's a unit or an item like Poaching Knife, which cares about killing opposing heroes or opposing units, but there's nothing else that cares about the creeps. So like you just always want your Brawny to kill the creeps, which is weird to say the least, unless they make that a more common mechanic where like other units care about killing creeps to get some kind of buff. I would also prefer if maybe they would reduce the number of if they're going to buff the numbers, right? If they're going to say, okay, you get more health per kill, but then you don't count creeps, you might also want to take a look at the kills on summons, specifically things like the Eidolon summons from Primordials and the Venomancer Plague Wards, and those type of summons do count as kills and give bonus health to the Brawny. I don't really think that makes... I think that adds like an interesting like counterplay. Makes Brawny a good counter to those strategies. If there's a lot of opponents going for summons, you go for Brawny and they stack up kills faster. But I think that would be a little bit too strong if you buff their numbers and get rid of the creeps. So maybe something like count summons as half of a unit, as opposed to killing a hero, which is a full unit. Something along those lines. I would also like to see Axe moved to 3 cost rather than 1 cost, because if you're going to keep this Brawny passive, I don't like it being able to commit to as soon as the very first round. I think that is... the games are supposed to be about this adaptation over time, and having strategies where it's like, oh, this 1-cost unit, I'm locked in that I'm going to go for the strategy because I need to start it right away, just doesn't... I don't think that jives with that overall idea of the game. You could buff him up to 3 cost and then increase his stats like they did to Tinker and Clockwork, and then kind of make Brawny a bit more mid-game focused, where you can kind of transition into it in the mid-game and not worry too much about, oh, I missed out the creep kills early, I can never get the snowball off the ground. In contrast, I like how they did Primordials as a rework to the Alliance items into the Alliance passive. I think it's an example of how to do those kind of build around strategies correctly. You can really swap into it at any time. There's not this snowball barrier to entry that you need to start it early, or do it early or do it not at all. It adds some interesting element to gameplay and positioning considerations, which Brawny does as well, but I think it does it just a little bit better, a little bit more interesting. Brawny is just like, okay, I want to stack kills, get more health, things that give me health. Whereas the summoning strategy is like, well, you want to position so that, you know, the Eidolons will summon and kind of distract the opponent, and they also deal some damage. I'm not exactly a huge fan of the interaction between that and Summoning Stone, since I think it spawns so many units that Summoning Stone basically becomes mandatory in those type of builds. But there is still some counterplay to that, whereas the counterplay to like the Brawny buff, like if they just have 10,000 health, there's like two things in the game that counter that. Doom's ability and Enigma, kind of, can do percent health. Like there really aren't that many counters, and like those are very specific counters. Whereas the Primordial, it's like, well, any AoE is really good because they have a lot of spawns that will catch in the AoE. So my final point I want to make is about the 3-star meta. In case of you guys don't know, right now at the highest level of gameplay, and probably every level of gameplay, the late game is dictated by who can get the most 3 stars. The 3-star in their units. You really, I mean, the winner of most games is going to have 4 or more 3-star units. And even people down in like 6th, 7th, 8th place are going to have 1 or 2 3-star units when they get eliminated, which is, to me, seems a little bit weird. Like, if you got a 3-star unit, that should be like a big point of power for you. And generally that doesn't mean you're going to get eliminated in 6th or 7th or 8th. But this 3-star meta right now is caused by a number of factors. First off, it's caused by the free reroll that we discussed earlier when you lose a PvP round, meaning people get more rerolls, they see more units, they have more options to get units leveled up and then to 3-star. Plus there's the blacklisting system, which was introduced a few patches back, where every time you click reroll, you know, you actually spend the gold to reroll, or you have the free one, not the one that you get naturally every round. Whenever you actually spend to reroll, you will not get a unit that was offered in the previous shop that you did not buy. You said, okay, I don't want to buy that, but I'm gonna choose to reroll right now, and then it'll say, okay, you're not gonna see that one, which does increase the odds of ones that you chose not to, essentially making more upgrades possible, because you're gonna see the ones that you don't want a little bit less often, and thus see the ones you do want a little bit more often. My big complaint with this 3-star meta is that it's a little bit brainless. I mean, that's like a harsh word to throw around, I guess, but in a lot of games kind of come down to, you play your early game composition, you level up to level 8, you find your composition that you want, and then as soon as you get to level 8, generally in around 21, you just start rerolling. You just spend all of your gold rerolling, you know, stopping at reasonable points where it makes sense, but there's no more consideration of like, oh, when do I level up? Well, you level up until you're level 8, sometimes level 7. When do you reroll? Once you hit 7 or 8, and then you just reroll everything. And then maybe you only ever get to level 9 or higher by the time you're into the top 3 or the late game. You're just trying to find as many 3-stars as possible. And you're also kind of hard committed to whatever strategy you started on. Whatever one you have already, you're just rerolling to find those same units to 3-star. It's like you have to keep playing the same units you picked early, and it's almost impossible to swap out units, because it means you're going to give up on trying to 3-star them. If you have like a 2-star tiny early, and then you have like another 2-star sitting on your bench, but you're like pretty far, I mean, you still need 3 more to get to 3-star. Like, it feels so bad to replace him, because you're not just replacing him, you're replacing all of the copies on your bench. And I think the game, once again, should be about this adaptation and this adjustment to what you're offered and what counters your opponents the best. And if like you feel locked into this, I have to get this unit to 3-star kind of mentality, then I think that limits your, like, it puts blinders on it. Like, he says, I have to go for this 3-star. I can't look away. I can't, you know, see what other options are available. You got to go for this 3-star. I mean, there's a little bit of flexibility, but certainly not as much as I think there should be. And the other cause of the 3-star meta is that they buffed 3-star units, obviously, a few patches back, specifically every 3-cost 3-star unit. So Phantom Assassin, Slark, Terrorblade are some of the bigger offenders, but even Abaddon, Omni Knight, and just every 3-cost unit in the game was buffed in that patch at 3 stars. I would definitely like to see some of these changes reverted, because that was actually before the free reroll system, or was it the same patch? I think it was before the free reroll, but it was with the blacklisting system, but it was before the free reroll patch. So I think they kind of overshot the meta a little bit, and now it's like exclusively 3 stars or nothing. And thus I would like to see them buff some of the 4 and 5 cost units just a little bit to kind of encourage getting those a bit more than right now. Because all of this also came with some substantial nerfs to 4 cost units, like Tidehunter at 4-star does not compare to old Medusa at 4 cost, sorry. And Kunkka got substantially nerfed, some of the most popular 4 cost units. I would also like to see them increase the sell cost of combined 2-star units. So right now, if you combine a 1 cost unit into 2 stars, you spent 3 gold and it sells for 3 gold. But everything else you come at a loss. If you combine the 3 copies of a 2 cost unit, you have spent 6 gold, but it only sells for 4. I'd like to see them maybe increase that, maybe not to a full refund, but like up to 5, and similarly up the chain of 2-star 3 cost units and 2-star 4 cost units to kind of increase your rate of return if you try to opt out of a strategy and try to switch, that it's a little bit easier and you don't need to be this, this narrow focus on just 3 stars. That's it. I can't deviate from what I already have. So that's just some of the thoughts that have been bouncing around my head the past couple days here on Dota Underlords. I don't expect any of these changes to happen in the very near future. I know that the developers have said they will be making a big update in the next couple of weeks, and so nothing big is going to happen until then. The hope is that that big update also includes the actual Underlords system, which I'm not going to speculate too much on, but because they haven't announced any details, but a lot of the speculation is that it'll be this kind of passive effect that you choose at the start of the game that will have some impact on your gameplay or strategy. I think that system would be very cool and certainly shake up the game and the meta. And so maybe some of these concerns become moot at that point. But they'll probably require some balance changes as well within that patch. And so that's a few weeks out. And hopefully it also comes with an announcement for the full release of the game, since technically we're still in early access. In any case, I think the game really is in a great spot right now, and most of my complaints are really kind of nitpicky more than anything else. So I really hope that you guys are enjoying the game as much as I am, and if you enjoyed my thoughts on a video like this, maybe I'll make this a more regular thing. So thanks for watching, I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe, it really does help me out a lot. See you next time.